Hey guys, it's Bear here, returning to preparedness, helping you prepare not for your doomsday, but your everyday. So this is podcast number 26, video version. This week on the podcast, we discussed 10 barter items you should stockpile for SHTF. And for those of you who don't know what SHTF, it's when it hits the fan. Okay. And what we're going to cover, it's not a top 10 list per se, it's just a list of 10 items that I feel would be hot commodities should SHTF happen, and they're items that you should stockpile to barter with to get other items that you may need. So even if it's not an item that you're going to consume, say in the means of like alcohol or, condoms is on my list, they're items that I feel are going to be a hot commodity should society collapse as we know it, and they're going to be items that you would be able to use to barter to get things like food and stuff like that, or other items you may need, or even work for that matter. Get somebody to weed the garden or whatever you got going on, that you can use to barter to get something in return that's going to be more valuable to you and your family. So I'm just going to go down the list. It's not a top 10, 1 through 10. Number 1, it's just 10 items that are hot commodities. You might see me looking at my phone here. That's where I got the list. So if you see me looking down, it's not anything. It's just me looking to make sure I hit everything. So number 1 on that list, the first item we're going to I shouldn't say number 1, but the first item we're going to cover on this list, or that we did cover in the podcast, was alcohol. And even if you are not a consumer of alcohol, we all know that alcohol plays a huge part in our society, and people are going to be willing to give up a lot to get that taste of alcohol in them, especially if they have an alcohol problem. All right, let's all be real here. It's the truth. So alcohol is going, and even if they don't have an alcohol problem, given what would be the current state of society, we're talking, societal collapse, apocalyptic type thing, Great Depression, alcohol is probably going to become more highly consumed during those times. And by having alcohol that you're willing to give up to barter with people, it just gives them a little release, a little relax, and you'd be surprised what people will be willing to give up to get that taste of alcohol. Not to mention, alcohol is great for herbal remedies and like tinctures and stuff. So you can make tinctures which will help treat, ailments that you may be having or that somebody else may be having, which can also be used as a barter item. If you don't know what a tincture is, it's the alcohols used with herbs to create a tincture. Maybe we'll do a video on that later with my wife. She does a lot of herbal remedies and stuff like that. But so alcohol, not only for consumption, but for herbal remedies, plays a big part and always has, going way back. It's not anything new, but it's going to be a huge barter item. Next on the list, leading right after tinctures, was medications. And this goes from everything from, Tylenol and aspirin, ibuprofen, to, Benadryl, to Imodium, to antacids, antihistamines, allergy pills. Could be antibiotics. And while you can't necessarily get antibiotics over the counter, you can get fish antibiotics. And fish antibiotics are actually made in the same places that human antibiotics are. They're just different dose rates. A great book for that is Alton's Antibiotics and Infectious Diseases. He talks all about that. And Dr. Alton is 2 great books out there right now. The Survival Medicine Handbook and Alton's Antibiotics and Infectious Diseases are 2 great books that I recommend. But it goes through there and he tells out exactly that, listen, there's not a special plant for fish antibiotics. And for those of you who didn't know that there is such a thing as fish antibiotics, there is, because fish get sick and a lot of people spend a lot of money on their aquariums. Therefore, they want to keep their fish healthy, so they do give them antibiotics. And these antibiotics, again, there's not a special plant producing just fish antibiotics. There's no difference. Even though they're not made for human consumption, and I would not recommend consuming them, I can't recommend them. You know, just saying, end times, things happen. So, but having an abundance of medications, you know, not only ones that you consume, but other items that, you know, people are going to need, you know, like I said, Benadryls, other, you know, allergy medications over the counter, cold medications, you know, ibuprofen, Advil, Aleve, aspirin, Tylenol, all that stuff, and being able to barter with that. Not only is it going to come in handy for you and your family, but to be able to barter for that for somebody who's, you know, going through some pain or something like that, or, you know, they might, you know, you might be able to get something you need, and that's what these barter items are for. Next on the list was water filters and water filtration. Right now, our water system is obviously filtered and for the most part clean, but you know, we're talking SHTF, and water filters such as like the Sawyer Minis or the Life Straws could be huge and play a big part in not only being able to have drinking water for yourself and your family, but being able to use that to barter with somebody else who may need some fresh, clean water for their family. Because you look at a lot of issues that happened across the world, and a lot of leading diseases. Dehydration plays a huge part in it because people don't have clean water, and you know, a lot of people die from that annually, more than you would believe. So having a good water filter, not even, I shouldn't say a good water filter, but a way to filter water, such as the Life Straws or Sawyer Minis. They're inexpensive, and you can stockpile them. They don't take up a lot of space, so it's a good item to have. Next on the list, coffee or tea. A lot of people, just like alcohol, are huge consumers of coffee. If they weren't, Starbucks wouldn't be as big as it is. I mean, you know, coffee is everywhere. Everybody consumes it, and people are going to be jonesing for caffeine. So that's a huge item for barter, and it's a good item to stockpile, not only for your own personal consumption like I do, but, you know, even if you don't partake in coffee or tea or caffeine, a lot of people do. Cigarettes is another item, or other tobacco. Again, it's another vice that a lot of people partake in, and come societal collapse, man, people are going to be looking for that cigarette. And even people who quit smoking or don't smoke may partake, and just kind of a way to cope, a coping mechanism. And that's what a lot of these vices are. You know, it's a way for people to cope with issues that are going on in their reality. So cigarettes, tobacco items, you know, nicotine gum, things like that, they're going to play a huge part in bartering should society cease to exist as we know it now. Next on that list is chocolates and candies. Again, same thing with the cigarettes and coffee and alcohol. I mean, sugar is a huge addiction for people, and people get that sweet tooth, and they got to have that candy. And you know, chocolate, and it's more addictive than you could ever imagine. Sugar itself, and that's going to play a big part in being able to barter with people. It's going to be a hot commodity. Continue on. I don't want to talk too much. If you want more information and more in depth, go ahead and listen to the podcast. That can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can go right to journeytopreparedness.net, and you can look at podcast number 26. Is where we covered all these items more in detail. Next on that list is salt, sugar, and spices. And these, you can look over history and see that, sorry about that. You can look over history and see that, you know, society's been built on spice trade, and you know, salt plays a huge factor in our diet, and we need it to live, honestly. Sugars, different spices, and if you are, you know, going through a Great Depression type scenario, and you're eating, you know, rice and beans and not very flavorful food, being able to throw some spices in those and change that flavor, so you're altering your diet, so you don't feel like you're consuming the same thing, is going to be a huge morale boost. And so that's why these, sugars and spices, spices and salts and things like that are going to play a huge part and be able to, fetch a decent amount in a barter situation. Again, society over history spices have played a huge part in in everything. Like I said, empires have been built off of spices, so you can go back and look and do the research and see. For those of you who don't know and think I'm joking, it's out there. Batteries are going to be huge, hot commodity. If we're in a SHTF situation and the grid's down, you're going to be relying on light that you produce, not electricity. So flashlights and lanterns and things like that are going to play a huge part in it. So batteries are going to be a hot commodity. I think that speaks for itself. Next on the list, condoms. As much as you don't think so, right? It's the end times, man. People are going to be getting busy. Right? It's reality. I mean, look at the way people are now. And just imagine if you feel like, oh, I got nothing to lose, I mean, the world's ending. People are going to be out there trying to get it. And nobody's going to want to get pregnant and be bringing a baby into that type of society. So condoms are going to be a huge barter item. Even if you're not using them, people are going to be looking for them. And the last of the 10 items is hygiene products. And that's going to be, soaps, deodorants, toothpaste, toothbrush, all that kind of stuff that's going to help you feel clean, be able to, it's going to be more for a morale boost than anything. If you've been grungy and grimy and, you have nothing, to be able to get even if you're jumping in a lake, to be able to, get a nice little shower, a bath in, with some soap and kind of clean yourself up, it's going to be huge. Not to mention the disease and crap that's going to be going around. If you're able to have some hand sanitizer just to clean your hands off, so you're not, getting all that stuff in your mouth, and that's how diseases are transmitted, right? I mean, they tell us all the time during flu season not to put, not to be touching your mouth, eyes, and nose and stuff like that, because that's how it's all transmitted. So if you can keep yourself clean and hygienic, then it's going to go a long way to your survival. So being able to provide those items to somebody else in a barter situation, because you have a stockpile and an abundance of them, not to mention things like toilet paper. I mean, just imagine what it's going to be like if you're not able to cleanly wipe yourself. You're going to get sick of leaves and pine cones and whatever else you can find, and some good old TP is going to really come in handy. So again, this is not the only list. This is not a end all be all. It's not a top 10. There's a lot of other items that you could be stockpiling for barter, but these are items that I think are going to be hot commodities. And for more details and more in depth on this, go to the podcast. I'll leave a link below in the description. Until next time, this has been Bear with Your Preparedness, helping you prepare not only for your doomsday, but your everyday. Peace.